Imagine if Nike opened a hotel. You could probably imagine what that lobby looks like. You could probably imagine the aesthetic, the kind of colors, the feel, the kind of people that might work there. But then if I said, okay, imagine if Hyatt made shoes. Like, what might that look like? I don't think you would have any clue what a Hyatt branded sneaker would look like. And that's the fundamental difference.
This is Slackers, unscripted business insight from two lifelong builders. Jaime and Jonathan are here to show you how big ideas travel across industries. Consider it your weekly companion on the path to better work and a better way of working.
When most people hear the word brand, they think design project. Logo, color palettes, fonts, maybe some clever tagline if you're feeling, really ambitious. And that's fine. That stuff all matters, but that is not what a brand actually is. A brand is basically two things. It's a shortcut and it's a promise. You see, a shortcut is what fires in someone's brain, in their head, when they see your name in their inbox, when they see your logo, the billboard. It's a feeling, it's an expectation. It's a thoughtful, educated guess about what they're about to get. And the promise is whether that expectation keeps getting met over time. That's it. No secret sauce, no magic, no hype. And so today we want to strip this back to entry-level thinking, especially for builders and operators who don't really think of themselves as brand people, right? Because whether you are running a company or you're building a product, you're leading a team, or you're publishing content, you already have one. So the question is not, do I have a brand? It's, what shortcut am I creating for people, and what promise am I actually able to keep? Jonathan, man, it is good to see you. We are rocking this week. So brand, right? You and I touched this in lots of different ways over the arc of our history. Where do you see people getting this wrong, like right out of the gates when they think about brand?
There's so many things around brand that are interesting, I think, because we try to protect brands. Like, this is one of those things where you go through the trouble, whether you created your brand or your brand kind of got created based on what happened around you, how tightly you hold on to that, and whether you take control of it, where you're going to define who you are and what you're trying to be, or you kind of let your environment shape it for you. And it happens both ways a lot. Like, if you don't take control of your brand early, sometimes your brand kind of becomes its own thing. It can be difficult to get your arms around it, where you got something out in the wild, maybe you put a product out there, you haven't really rallied around, who you're trying to be or what promises you're making and how that should look and some of this stuff. And then you start to find your audience, and they kind of and latch onto that, and they start kind of defining, like, what does this mean to them? And then it kind of, that sometimes can be what your brand starts to become, almost defined by the customers who found you, if you don't do it yourself. Whether you're in control of your brand or not, to your point, you got a brand. You may not be getting the most out of it or leaning all the way into it, but there's the way that the world sees you and the way you want to be seen. And if those things are a little bit incongruent and you don't really take a lot of control to lead it, you might find that you aren't the one in charge of your brand in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the design piece of this is a very easy trap for, I think, entry-level folks exploring brand-related exercises, because it just sort of feels like something you heard about, like in a class or in a group where they were showing you logos and they were showing you design-related things. So the number of times, I've been a part of a conversation where various stakeholders are going, we're going through a rebrand, or we're going through a brand exercise. And what they're really talking about is this like design spike of creating logos, looking at colors. And it's just wild how often you kind of get stuck or spend a lot of energy on that phase of the brand sort of process. Not to say that phase isn't important. It matters. It's a thing. But boy, does that seem to kind of cut the line in people's effort and energy when they think about what they want to do and when they want to apply effort to a brand thing. One of my favorite examples of the difference between like a logo and a brand, because they are related, there's interplay, is thinking about, okay, what if I told you, you're listening, right? If I said, okay, shut your eyes, imagine if Nike opened a hotel. If there was a Nike hotel, you could probably imagine what that lobby looks like. You could probably imagine the aesthetic, the kind of colors, the feel, the kind of people that might work there. It's not that much of a stretch to imagine what a Nike branded hotel experience might feel like as soon as you walked in the door. But then if I said, okay, imagine if Hyatt made shoes, if Hyatt made sneakers, like what might that look like? I don't think you would have any clue what a Hyatt branded sneaker would look like. And that's the difference in my mind, is because Hyatt does not really have a brand. There's sort of this interchangeable hotel logo that could identify for a wide variety of lobbies you've probably all been in before. And that's the fundamental difference. So yes, we need design components to the brand experience, but the brand is this underlying story that we are able to use, like I kind of said at the top, as a mental shortcut. Like I don't need all the information about Nike to understand that I'm having an interaction with Nike. So the brand allows my brain to rapidly get to a place where I go, oh, okay, yeah. I know what this is. I know where I am. I don't need the whole history of the thing. I get it. And then the promise piece is okay, I'm sort of allowing my understanding of the brand to make an unstated promise to me about like the experience I'm about to get. I'm sort of assuming what dealing with somebody in the Nike lobby of the hotel might, be like, as opposed to something else. I've always found that like a helpful kind of framing as far as the difference between sort of logo and brand. And if you get the right group of people around a table and everyone's sort of nodding their head going, oh, okay, yeah, here we go. Then I think another helpful place to go is, okay, if we agree maybe around our table here on what a brand is, you and I talk a lot about empathy, trying to be oriented around the customer. Then you kind of got to go to a place of, well, what do people use brands for in their life? Like we know how it helps them. We talked about the mental shortcut in that, but what do we as people use them for? And in many ways, people are using brands as a way to signal to the world around them who they believe they are and who they would like to be perceived as in the world. I mean, it's why the logo on your hat, the bumper sticker on your car, the shirt that you're wearing, all of these things that we collect in our life, the car we're driving, the beer, the drink we had at the bar, these are all little signals that allow us to kind of broadcast to other people around us, who we believe ourselves to be. And if you can sort of hold both of those ideas in your head at the same time, brand is not logo, it's a deeper thing. And people use brands to signal their sense of identity in many ways as they move through the world. Then I think you have the foundation when you're working with a group to kind of go into a brand exercise, thinking about, oh, well, like what you just said, maybe we have one today that we didn't even really know about, because either it doesn't mean anything and our logos are just sort of floating around somewhere, or boy, we all know what this story is of what we do, but we've never packaged it up in a way to make it clear and visible to the people that we interact with.
Another part of this, you touched on it there, but a brand kind of stands for something, right? It shows you what you're about, right? And you talked about that as well. We might collect brands as people as part of our own brand. Almost everyone has a brand, right? Even if you don't really know it or lean into it or define it in any way, the way you show up every day, you are exhibiting a brand of some sort, right? Most of us don't have wildly different presentations of ourselves every day. We have a particular style. We have a particular way about ourselves. We have sensibilities and culture things we embrace. And then we find other brands that align with that. And then we bring those into our universe and we showcase them, whether it's cars or shirts or sneakers or whatever it might be. It all says something. Like we're all, in some ways, when we exhibit brands or we're a brand that's trying to attract people, in a lot of ways, we're trying to align ourselves with the people who either are like us or enjoy the things we like or that value the problems we solve, right? And so we align with those things. And if we put a brand out there that says we stand for, it could be all kinds of things. It could be that we stand for fun and joy and delight and a lot of these things. And so therefore our brand immediately needs to feel that way. Like it can't be like very aggressive and sharp and all these other things. We're trying to be fun and approachable. And when you do sit in, like you talk about, you sit around the room, if you're sitting around a room and having kind of a brand conversation, those are the kinds of things that start coming out. It's not like, well, I wish the logo looked a little less like this or more like this, or I've never really liked our orange, or I've been in brand conversations that are like that. And by the way, yes, those are just throwing rocks at the logo is not a brand meeting really. But in the room, when you start talking about brand, you do start talking about the attributes and the values of your brand as just part of the conversation. Who do we want to be? And what kinds of people do we want to attract? And how do those things be congruent? So, because that's where the authenticity like of a brand comes into play. It's like, I'm trying to project out into the world that I'm fun and approachable and exciting. And yet if I'm not behaving that way, then it's going to feel false or it won't feel authentic, right? It's like I'm the big tough guy brand, but then on the other side, I don't do any of those things. And then the people I'm trying to attract are like, yeah, this isn't real, right? Like this isn't a real thing. And so all of those things start to wrap into it, which is, who are you trying to be if you're creating a brand? Who are you trying to attract so that those things match? And can you do it with enough credibility that you walk the walk and the people that you attract do as well? And that could be anything. Some of this goes into help show the people who are trying to identify your brand that you share their values, you understand them, that you guys are kind of a tribe or a group amongst yourselves, and that being part of that means that you're aligned with those people as well, right? And it's a way to kind of showcase that. And it absolutely works both ways. I know not everybody has seen our, video stuff, or maybe doesn't even know exactly what we look like outside of the, our little silhouette from our album cover, but there's things in there that touch on brand, right? There's things that make Jamie recognizable and me recognizable in there, even though our faces aren't there and there's really nothing else about us there, because there's brand elements of us that live there. Those are signals, right? Like if you see me on the street, I'm typically in a baseball cap and probably a black hoodie or t-shirt, jeans, and Air Jordans. That is 90% of the time you're going to see me look like that. And so there's things about that come off on that, right? Which is like, oh, basketball fan, casual person. Like there's things that you start to kind of tie into this. Of like, if I resonate with those things, if I like to wear Air Jordan shoes and I like to wear baseball caps out in public and I like to do these things, I immediately start seeing that as a person who's like kind of like me, right? Now, whether or not we have shared other values, it's hard to say. But in that quick moment, which you talk about as a shortcut, right? You glance around and you start to see things that are like, okay, that's a brand I align with. It feels like me. And so I kind of gravitate toward that. We do that with cars too. We'll see a car, but whoa, that car's really cool. And someone else may say, that car kind of sucks. But in your head, you're like, nope, that aligns with the things I like and value. So I'm attracted to this car and this brand now too. And other people who are attracted to that brand. And now we're part of a group. And that's where things start to get really interesting, where if companies build their brand about who they are and who they're trying to be, to work with, and that those things all align up, and you are able to present that in your creative, your logos, your colors, all of the things you do to put out in the world to signal your brand, and you believe it and you walk it, and the people that come in align with it and they resonate with it, and you build it and lean into it, and now your brand has like a real force in the marketplace. It's a force multiplier of being like, the more you get, the more you get. And the more people that come in that are like you, the more your company wants to be like them. And you start having this very organic thing where the people that come in to your company know and recognize your brand. They even know how to behave. As soon as they show up, I know what this brand means. I'm part of this team. If you go get a job at Oakley or Quicksilver or Nike, to your point, right? Some of these brands immediately shout like, I know what kind of person I kind of need to be if I'm going to go work at that place and make things for people who are also like them. That's where all of the connective tissue starts to fit in, but it is so much more when you think of brand than, logos and colors. It's like that is an extension of that, but everything else is really more emotional and connective than what you see in just the logo design.
One of the things that I want to pull out is another potential trap in this whole process if you are working through brand related exercises, and that is the misalignment of your abilities as an organization or an individual or whoever's trying to kind of work on the brand piece of the thing, the misalignment between your abilities and your aspirations. Because when you sit around the table and you go, yeah, we want to be that. We want to be that. That's what it is. What's implied is that you've done the skills assessment to say internally, oh yeah, we can actually deliver on that. And I see that all the time where you put a really ambitious brand identity target on the board, but you haven't really done a skills audit, an abilities audit. Like, can we actually behave that way in the world? And that's like a critical piece, because it makes me think, like, if somebody is smart, is like starting and they run a small team, or they're building by themselves, or they're trying to, do something new inside an organization, like, where would you have them start? And I would argue the exercise, the place to start, and we talk about this a ton, is an empathetic worldview for the people you're trying to serve. Like, if you haven't done that yet and try to intimately understand what's going on with the people, that your unique skills that you bring to the table, the value, the problems you can actually solve, if you haven't done that exercise of going, what do those people really struggle with? What unique solutions can we bring to the table? Are we really doing cycles to understand how we bring value to their life? It gets really hard to audit your own skills and abilities. And you have to do that if you're going to put an aspirational brand target on the board, because lots of times you go, yeah, we want to be that big thing. That's great. That's awesome that everyone falls in love with. And somebody thoughtfully, hopefully goes, guys, I don't know if we can deliver on that promise. Not because we don't want to. That'd be great. But we're not like fundamentally structured to do that. And that's going to kill us on day one. So you kind of have to have that exercise of do our abilities map to the aspiration that we're putting on the board as building a brand. That's sort of like, the piece of it. And then again, like that empathetic worldview for who your customers are, because at the end of the day, you're trying to serve somebody. You're trying to bring real value, provide real relief, remove pain, add joy, add delight to real human beings. And so often, I mean, I feel like I'm sure you've got stories here. So often I feel like the brand exercise, if you start stacking blocks to build a thing, is like a reflection of the founder, or a reflection of like the CEO or whoever's the loudest voice around the boardroom. And that's really what drives the shaping of the brand.
Well, yeah.
And that's so backwards, right? Because, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I know we, touched on at the beginning, but there is an interesting thing that goes on at most companies, which is, to your point, it might be that the founder, the CEO, the whoever says, we are going to be this, I'm defining this, this is who we are, and let's go, right? And sure, that happens. And then there's times where, like, we've talked about this, where if you're not exactly sure who your customers are and you're just kind of building the thing because you can, that's when brand stuff gets really wild, because you sit down and you're like, I'm not really sure who our customer is. I believe this is a problem a lot of people have. We're going to go try and build a thing. And then this is the old, we built it, now let's figure out who we can sell it to problem, right? And then so you sell it to whoever will buy it. And now there's just the brand identity is just gone, right? Because you didn't ever build it for anyone. You just kind of built a thing. Maybe you built it for yourself, frankly. And so sometimes it can be an extension of that. But you built a thing, and then people found it. And then eventually they start shaping your brand, because now you have acquired a tribe. You don't know who the tribe is really, because they've kind of acquired it themselves. But they start to form a culture around your product, and maybe if you're lucky, you've got fans, but certainly people that have said, I like this thing, I'm going to share it with other people, and then they go and the people like them go get it, and then kind of your brand gets presented to you sometimes, which is really interesting, where you look out in the wild and you say, like, wait a minute, look who our customers are. This is different than who we are, and even what inspired us to build this thing in the first place. And so that's where you get into these like brand identity crisis things, where the brand you want to be is actually out of alignment with the customers who want to buy your stuff. And it's super risky when you're in that lane, because usually you're faced with one of two things in that mode. You either embrace the brand you've become, that got out of your hands, the tribe decided this is who we are, and you're like, you know what? Let's be that. Let's be that. That'll make our fans happy. These people will rally around us. Our brand will align with kind of what happened out in the world. And we're just going to adapt. We're going to make that our brand. We're going to lean into it. We already got an installed base. Everything's great. And we're going to try and become that. Now, to your point, you may not be able to. This may not be a strength. You might have to figure out, like, how do we super serve this audience with the brand that they have kind of built themselves, or what they've built the brand up to be? And if we go try and be that, we have to be really careful that we don't all of a sudden look like we're pretending to be that, which is really tough, right? A brand that's trying to pretend to be something else gets exposed pretty quickly today, where someone's like, these guys, that's not their thing. Like, they're trying to pretend like this is who they are. But that's not who they are. The flip to that coin is you say, our brand's getting out of control. A whole tribe has claimed our brand, and they're waving the flag of who this brand is. And that's not who we want to be, and that's not who we can be. So we are going to take the reins, and we're going to go disrupt this by saying, wait, world, sorry we didn't define our brand to begin with. We're going to do it now because it's becoming a brand we don't want. Like, maybe we're becoming the cheap discount brand, and that was not where we were trying to head, or whatever. So we try and flip the script, and we say, nope, hey, sorry, everybody. This is who we are. This is what we believe in. And what happens? Your tribe goes, you turned on us. You guys are leaving us behind. This is not who this happens in music all the time, right? The band that goes, becomes, supernova, and their fans are stuff going around, be like, wait a minute. I thought this was the cool local band that we could go see on Friday nights. And now I'm watching them on SNL. I don't know. This feels like they sold out, and now you're not part of the brand anymore, right? They went a different direction, and maybe absolutely decided to leave you behind. And that was a choice they made. And so if you don't really set it up the beginning and really kind of control who you want to be, what you want to be, what you're capable of being, to your point, and then go get the people who get excited about that and then feel very credible that they've kind of hired you to do the thing, and then you grow together, that's it. That's the sauce. Either of those other two paths, very rocky roads, and a lot of times it's fit with a tremendous amount of pain, because if you're rebranding because you lost control of your brand, you might be at risk of losing the fans you did acquire. And if you're rebranding to align with the tribe, you better make sure you can pull it off from a credibility standpoint, or you might lose them anyway, right? Like this, it's a very risky place to be if you're kind of cavalier about the way that you start bringing your stuff to market early. If you don't take control of your brand then and create promises you can keep, you might be in a really difficult fork in the road down the way, where you're going to have to make some tough choices, which may result in either a complete culture and brand pivot or sacrificing the fans you've taken this time to build in the first place.
Oof, that is the truth. The pain associated with that is real. Well, I guess glasses half full is, boy, what a fantastic exercise if a person, a team, a group is going through those beats intentionally, like they decided to go do that. That's great. More often than not, it is, at least I've seen it be totally accidental and totally, tail wagging the dog as to why you would even go through those exercises to begin with. So here's a rapid zoom out real quick, just to try to bring some stuff forward around this concept that I think is worth acknowledging. It's just in our lifetime, you and me, and we haven't seen all of this arc of history, but we can hold it in our heads, I think. It's just worth noting that in the world, that the whole idea of like marketing a brand to sell a thing is a fairly recent human idea. We didn't used to go do that when we lived in small villages and towns. You knew the butcher, you knew the baker. These are the things. The idea that suddenly brands had to go exist so we could build a relationship with them is a fairly recent human thing, largely driven on the back of broadcast media, because suddenly you could talk to a whole bunch of people, regardless of geography, which suddenly that meant we needed stories like, hey, little elves live in trees and make these cookies. And that's why when you're looking at the cookie aisle in the grocery store, there's loads of packages of cookies. You might want to pick the one that reminds you of the fun, cute little elf that lives in a tree that makes a cookie. Yeah, I'll buy those, to help us like make a choice. Because we came from an age where broadcast media allowed us to basically take 12 cents of peanut butter paste and wrap it in this really emotionally powerful brand package of like, choosy moms, choose Jif. And therefore I'm a person who cares about my family, and sell it at a premium and just hammer people over and over and over and over again with broadcast media with that same brand code over and over and over and over again to sell this product and live it at a wildly beneficial profit margin. Those days are gone. So I'm fast forwarding to this point now where it's like, in the world where AI can accelerate all of the content creation you can think of across media, right? I can create text, images, audio, video, and just flood communication channels with stuff. What's somebody supposed to do in that world of brand building and brand creating? Because I would argue that it hasn't diminished the power of a brand, because really what we're talking about is just trust. At its core is like, do I trust a person? Do I trust a thing? Do I have a relationship that reminds me of somebody I've trusted before? Is there some callback by virtue of this brand existing that reminds me of something I've interacted with before where I had a good experience? In a world where we are flooded, the trust component, the value of that goes up in value, is what I would say, which to me is another way of saying brand probably matters now even more so than it did then, when you can't just win by outspending somebody at broadcast advertising. But I'll throw that to you. Like, what do you think of that notion?
Yeah, for any of us most of us have some form of social media consumption, and whatever yours may be, as you get exposed to marketing out in the wild, I wouldn't be surprised if probably more than half of the ads that you see every day are for brands you never heard of. A lot of them might be like, we think that you like to buy sneakers, so we're going to show you every sneaker brand we can think of that might convince you to buy our sneakers. Like, a lot of the advertising kind of goes like that, which, all your signals are you're shopping for a house or a car or a t-shirt or a shoes or whatever it may be. And maybe they're even athletic shoes, let's say, or maybe you've been on Nike's site and that signaled that you're that kind of a shopper. But then you start getting ads for like Chinese brands or like these importers that come into, wherever and distribute stuff. And so then you're like, well, okay, do I trust these guys? Like, am I going to give them my money? I don't know who they are, so I'm going to go do research. Yeah, there's lots of reviews. I don't know if I believe those. So you start looking for like, what are the signals that are going to tell me that I can trust whatever this brand is saying and whatever they're doing and putting in front of me? Because it's not just look at this shoe, it's awesome, and you go, that looks like an awesome shoe, I'm gonna go buy that shoe. No, it's so much more than that, right? And so it's like, wow, it's a brand I don't know. All right, well, what does that mean? Well, there's reviews. Yeah, those reviews seem bogus too. Does anybody I know? Hey, does anybody ever bought one of this brand things before? No. Okay, that's weird. My trust level is still super low, right? And so you're looking anywhere you can look. You're looking for signals that say, "Is this okay? Like, should I do this?" Like, because my initial reaction was whatever they presented to me, if I leaned in that far, was like the brand signals they gave me kind of aligned with my interests, whatever it was, or I wouldn't have cared. I'd have been like, "Nope, I'm not into that thing at all." But you see something, and the next thing you do is like, "Is this from a trusted brand?" And you're like, "Nope, it's not." Okay, now I've got a lot of decisions to make. These people have done a great job of marketing to me that they have a product. They have not done a great job yet of convincing me that their brand is trustworthy. And that's on me. I have to now decide, have they crossed the bar of me investing in their brand or not? And so I'm looking at those signals. Now, for the ones that aren't the ones you haven't heard of, you see an ad for Nike or Adidas or whatever. Now it's different, right? You're like, as soon as you see the ad, if it's a brand that you already trust, all that's out the window. It's just a matter of like, does this solve a problem I have? And if it does, I'm in. If I can afford it and it solves the problem I have, this brand's already got me. I'm considering what they're offering right now. So the evaluation of what you're looking at there is different, right? Because if I see the brand and trust the brand, now trust is not part of my equation. I'm thinking more along, does this solve a real problem I have? And can I afford to buy it? Does it make sense for me to make this purchase? And in the other case, I might say like, well, I could definitely afford this purchase, but I don't know if this brand is going to do all the things I hope they're going to do, right? The hurdle I have to cross if I'm that second brand is a very different gap than the other guys have. You know, sometimes we talk about brand building and like, you know, when you're promoting versus when you're building brands and like all these things. And if you aren't taking the time to set those values and provide those signals for people to join your brand or to like, and Facebook's done this for years where they'll be like, you'll see a brand you don't know and this is Jamie likes this. You're like, oh, there's a signal. That signal gives me information that says, okay, well, that's certainly more of an endorsement that I had a minute ago when I didn't realize that Jamie liked this brand too. And they're like, oh, wait, Jamie and 7 other people that I know like this brand too. Okay, maybe I'm questioning my own. Like maybe I'm just out of the loop. Like I should probably pay more attention to this brand. Like I almost doubt myself versus the other way around, right? Like, and so this is where I think brands are so interesting because that's what we look to. You know, we look to the people we trust. We look at the people around us that are kind of like us. And if they're showcasing brands that we don't know, we start applying value to that, right? Like, okay, I don't know that brand, but Jamie wears it like all the time. So I should probably understand more about, I'm gonna go look into that brand, see what's going on, right? Like, because I see people that I trust and people that are like me that are starting to lean into this brand and I don't know it. So now I feel like it's on me to go solve this problem in some ways, right? And so brand can be so powerful in that because people want to be part of groups. They want to be around the people that are kind of like and value the things they like and value. And by putting your mark on whatever those things are, you're letting your brand say, hey guys, we're all together here. Like if you feel like you're out of the club, get our brand and now you're part of the club. Like you're in it. That's been like the fail safe for brand for years. Find somebody cool, put your brand on them. Everybody wants to be the cool person. I want that brand too. And that works until everyone feels like, well, that's not cool anymore. And then now the next thing happens. And that's just, you know, how we go. But it is a fascinating thing of how fast we look at a brand and say, oh, I recognize that brand. That brand's good. It's people like me. That's it. Whatever product they have to offer, the trust part, I'm setting aside. I trust this brand. The opposite, of course, is true. Oh, that brand, those guys always screw me. They always do bad stuff. Never trusting them again. Like, that's it. I'm going to go tell the people that brand's terrible. So it can be a double-edged sword. If your brand is highly recognizable and you're not delivering on your promises, you're making it very easy for people to realize that you don't do that.
Dude, all right, so here's where I moonlight for 30 seconds as like a social anthropologist or something like that. It's worth noting at a very primal level that we as humans have evolved, that we are inherently skeptical creatures because thousands and thousands of years ago, right? It's like looking at how few people really kind of enjoy trying new foods. You know, some people do love that, but the notion of trying something new used to come with very real risk at a very primal level, right? There was very real risk that if I tried something new, I could be dead. So we're sort of wired to be incredibly skeptical at our core. The whole notion of the traveling salesman is kind of, you know, layered on top of that. So anyway, I love filtering brand through this lens of just trust at its core. And if you're running a thing, building a thing, thinking to yourself, How many receptors do I have in the world to even communicate that I can be trusted in the first place? And assuming I have those, what are the behaviors that I exude? What do I do to demonstrate that I am trustworthy? Where's the social proof? Can I show up consistently over time? These are the types of things that build trust. What it's also making me realize, dude, is this is probably a much deeper topic than you and I thought it was. I thought this would be a fun one to kick around, and we could probably riff for hours and hours. So here's what we're going to do. Why don't we land this plane for today? We're going to come back to this. Maybe this is like a series. Maybe there's like a few beats of the brand conversation that come out of this. But I think you and I got to like regroup on how we maybe break this apart. There's so much here. Man, it's good to see you, man. Thank you for listening. This is Slackers. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Jonathan.
As always, we're glad that you're here. Check the show notes for links to our work. Drop us a note. Leave us a question. Ask us a question. That's phrased better. Stand by for more brand conversations. Feels like we're tip of the iceberg. So thank you again. Talk soon.